Hi, this is Brianna Markwell, and this is my final presentation for my action plan for SED 491. For this project, I focused on a student in my classroom who is a 8-year-old boy who I'm calling Gavin. He has been diagnosed with autism and has a lot of struggles in the classroom as far as attending and anxiety. And so for this, I've really put together a plan that will focus on helping him cope with his anxiety and ways to work with his family and to work with my special education coworker and the rest of the support staff. So our first goal for this plan was to research effective behavior and self-management strategies. And at the bottom of this slide, you can see the CEC professional practice standard that this connects to. I'll give you a second to look at that. So to connect with this goal, I had 4 sub-goals or 4 steps in order to accomplish this goal. The first one was to research a variety of evidence-based behavior and self-management strategies. In order to do that, I did research through Milner Library, and I also was in close contact with my special education co-teachers who have a variety of great strategies that they use in their classrooms, and some that they've used that haven't been successful for some students, but they thought might work for Gavin. My second step was to observe the student to determine the target behavior that the student needed support in, and then plan for and implement appropriate self-management strategies with the student, and then finally to progress monitor. So the first sub-goal was to research a variety of evidence-based behavior and self-management strategies. And as I said before, I was in close contact with my special education co-teachers and did research through Milner Library, finding peer-reviewed articles and evidence-based practices. So this resulted in an increased knowledge of strategies that were appropriate for the age of my student and for his particular needs at this time. I was able to collect multiple options to offer the student, not just one thing works for everyone, as we all know. So having kind of a collection of things, strategies for him to work through, I thought would be appropriate to let him decide what worked best for him. And then during this time, I was also looking for strategies for the family to be able to use at home. At the beginning of the school year, they were having a really difficult time with anger issues and frustration with Gavin, and just really working through some serious struggles at home. And I really wanted to find things that they might be able to use in place when he was away from school as well. The next sub-goal was to observe the student to determine his needs. And so again, I was relying on my special education co-teachers and Milner Library to find different strategies. So by observing the student, I was able to narrow down to what I felt was his most significant need, which was dealing with anxiety. Gavin's always very concerned about what's coming next, even though we have a routine, we have a classroom schedule posted. It's pretty much the same thing every day. Just looking for things to help Gavin move past the anxiety of what's coming next and just be able to kind of settle into the routine. When I observed Gavin, it was a good time for me to build a stronger bond with him. I wanted to have a real positive relationship and hoping that he would trust me as his teacher to help him make the right decisions and help him through some frustrating situations. So we also spent some time discussing a couple of different strategies and some pros and cons and what he liked and what he didn't like. Gavin is kind of a gross motor guy. He likes a lot of big movements, but really smart, and really enjoys to do puzzles and kind of sorting through things like that, like a detective. So we worked together to find some things that we thought would work well for him in the classroom. The next step was to plan and implement the appropriate self-management strategies. For this, I looked at Gavin's IEPs to see where he had goals written, and he did have goals written for self-regulation and managing frustrating situations. So I felt like I was really on the right track with where I was headed. Again, I used my special education co-teachers and then feedback from the student, which I feel like at this age in second grade, Gavin is completely able to talk through his frustrations and to really say, this is bothering me today, or I think this strategy really works for me. This one's not so great. And so having Gavin there as an active participant was really important for me. So the results are, I was able to gain knowledge of the student's IEP goals and accommodations by really sitting down and looking through that IEP, not just relying on someone like the special education teacher to tell me what was in the plan, but to actually sit and look at it. I was able to develop a good bond with Gavin. I think we're really on the same page as far as wanting what's best for him, and he knows that that's what I want. And then just figuring out strategies that Gavin likes and that he thinks are easy and effective. To wrap up this goal, I will be doing some progress monitoring with the student. The people that will be involved are the parents, paraprofessionals, a special education co-teacher, of course the student, and I'll be using some data collection sheets to connect to the IEP goals. So this I'm planning to have more of a 12-week intervention of sorts to determine if these strategies are actually working well for Gavin. But after 6 weeks, I'm going to plan to meet with this team of people and determine if this strategy has been an effective one for Gavin. And if we're finding that it really just isn't working, we would start looking into some other things. But my hope is, because Gavin will have buy-in to this, that we will really find something good for him and be able to continue to use it through the entire 12 weeks and then on to the rest of the school year. Okay, goal number 2 is very similar to goal 1. We're going to teach and monitor self-management skills to a child with an IEP. Again, you can see the CEC professional practice standard there. My sub-goals for this are to identify the primary self-management skill to improve the targeted behavior. And as I mentioned before, we are going to use the HIT exercises and some self-management strategies that Gavin selects. And then we're going to plan and implement those with the student and again, progress monitor. So to identify the primary self-management skill and improve the target behavior, I sat down with the IEP team and Gavin's parents during parent-teacher conferences, and they really expressed some concerns about Gavin's anxiety level and his frustration at home. And so as a team, we discussed different strategies to introduce to Gavin. And then from there, Gavin selected 5 of the strategies that he wanted to use in the classroom. So I introduced things separately and then gave him the choice of what he would like. So when we selected this strategy, I worked with the special education co-teachers, my speech and language pathologist, and then the research I conducted through Milner Library. So here's an example you can see of the HIT exercises, and these are just something that the whole class has really taken on and really enjoys doing. We practice these exercises right before reading, which is an hour long, and right before math, which is also an hour. We pick 3 exercises at a time to work through, and it's really intense, gross motor, heavy pressure exercises that help to reduce anxiety and hyperactivity, as I've noticed in my classroom. They were really fun to teach. It's what I focus on with video 1. The kids had a great time learning them, and now I pick one person and they pick the 3 exercises, and then another person picks for the next activity. So every day somebody gets to pick 3 different exercises, and it only takes 45 seconds per movement, and they're all connected to animals, which are great because that's what 2nd graders love. And we just get some energy out, and then we're ready to focus on what we need to do. I also have some toolkits of strategies that I got from my speech and language pathologist. So when I introduced these to Gavin in video 3, he selected some things that he could do independently at his seat. And he decided that he really thought that neck rolls and working on puzzles and doing some mindfulness activities were really things that helped him to center and focus and really reduce the stress and anxiety he was feeling. So again, we're going to progress monitor. This is the same group of people working together, and then again, we're going to meet after 6 weeks with the parents, and that will be set for the middle of December. Okay, so goal 3 is to collaborate with the students' related services. So speech and language pathologist, social worker, OT, and of course the special education co-teacher to accomplish his goals. And so that's what the sub-goal there is as well. We have decided to meet once a month for whichever team members can make it and be there. The video I did for video submission number 2, I met with the special education teacher and the speech and language pathologist. We just discussed concerns that we have about Gavin. He had some medication changes that we needed to address, some follow-ups that we need to do with parents, and then just some positive things that he has done since parent-teacher conferences and since we started implementing these self-regulation strategies. I've also had a brief meeting with the social worker and the occupational therapist just to check in. How we doing? What do you need from me? What can I do to help Gavin be successful in and out of the classroom? So that's been a nice addition to what I was doing before. Okay, goal 4. Use effective practice and identification of the needs of the family, build relationships with the family, and provide supports for the child and the family. So, of course, we all know education doesn't stop just inside the school. Parents need support at home. They need strategies. They need to feel like their opinion is valued. So my sub-goals for this are to meet with the parents to determine the needs and goals for the family and the student. We talked about weekly emails to the parents, and then we are planning to meet every other month starting in December. So in December, February, and April, just to update on progress and any new concerns or changes that we need to see happen to make Gavin's day successful. So I'm going to, of course, the people involved in this are the parents, the special education teachers, special services. We'll have some data collection forms. So the last time we met was in October for parent-teacher conferences. This is when we really started narrowing down Gavin's need for support through his anxiety. And the parents at that time were going to adjust the medication to hope to alleviate some of the anxiety that Gavin was feeling during the day. While his school day was always relatively good, they were having a lot of issues at home. And since they've had that medication adjustment, we're actually seeing more behavioral concerns at school, and they're seeing better nights at home. So it's going to be that delicate balance of finding what we can do to support him at school so he can also have good days at school and good days at home. we started with the idea of having weekly emails sent to the parents, and it just really wasn't being as effective as it could be. Gavin's mother works in the building that he's in with me at school. And so a lot of times we would just catch each other in the hallway and kind of do a quick recap of the day. So we've decided Gavin wasn't always a real reliable reporter. And so we are now coloring on his assignment sheet the color that he ends up at the end of the day. So we have a clip chart for behavior. And so before the end of the day, I discuss with Gavin, we kind of review his day. How was it? Why did you end up on the color you're on? What can you do tomorrow to have a great day? And then we just discontinued the use of the weekly email. As I said before, we're going to meet in December, February, and April to update on progress with the special education team or the IEP team. And we're planning to meet December 17th to review the data. So I think it's really important that we focus on building relationships between parents and the school. This will help the students' days, the parents' nights, our nights, and just building that relationship to have a solid foundation for the student. So here are a couple of different articles I've found that might help you or interest you if you are looking to build those relationships. The first one, the Anzano and Tackett article, discusses the implications of families and children with autism who live in rural areas and how the lack of resources and funding has a big impact on the students' outcomes. It's a good read for anyone who teaches in a rural area like I do. The second article is the Blatcher et al. There, and it focuses on the importance of building positive relationships with our students with autism. The study focused on the relationships between teachers and their typically developing students, and then also their relationships with their students with autism. Not surprisingly, the study found that the relationships between the teachers and the students with autism were more strained and stressful than with the typical developing peers because the teachers felt like they were dealing with a lot of behavioral concerns and just the lack of social skills that they needed to form that bond with the student. So good read if you have students with autism in your classroom. The Garbex et al. Article looks at the importance of early intervention and relationship building between families and the school early on in the student's career. This study is a reminder that the families often come to us having fought long and hard to get the support their child needs. And we really need to be sure that we are working on their side, that we're working together as a team and building those relationships for a solid foundation. Many times in the education world, I feel that mothers are often the primary voice for their children, and oftentimes fathers are just brought in for meetings or for behavior concerns, but they're not always involved in the daily interactions between home and school. And this article by Gershwin, Mueller, and Buckley really focuses on the voice of the father and making sure that when we talk to parents, that we're speaking in parent-friendly language and not using our educational jargon and just kind of pushing our agendas through, but really taking the time to hear not only the voice of the mother, but to make the fathers feel like they're supported as well. In the last article listed here, you can find information about supporting your families through the stress that they deal with when they have a child who has special needs. We know that children come to us every day from home lives that are sometimes stressful, sometimes dangerous. So what we want to make sure that we're doing is that we are reducing the stress as much as possible at school so that kids can go home and hopefully their parents are happy they've had a good day. They're not dealing with a lot of the stress coming from school, emails or phone calls when there's a behavior concern. Um, really looking at this article is really looking at ways that we can improve the quality of life for these families, not only when they're younger, but as they age through the school system and then go out on their own. So if you're interested in finding out more information about building relationships with parents, these are some good articles to check out. Well, let's wrap this thing up. So it's been 3 years since I began this journey, and it's coming to an end. I started this adventure as a general education teacher who wanted to learn more about my special education students and how to better meet their needs. I'll have to say there have been some highs and some lows throughout the program. I hated statistics, and I'll be happy to never have to write an APA again. But I loved my autism courses, and Professor Nancy Braun was life-changing. Not sure if you had a course with her or not, but she's amazing. Her excitement and her love for her students with special needs and their families is unbelievable. And I think I would encourage you, if you didn't get a chance to take a class with her, to go ahead and sign up for one. If we all had her passion for students, I think we could make some real positive changes. I think going forward for me, I would really like to see my general education partners and the administration in our district really see the value of our special education program. Our teachers are amazing. Our kids are fantastic. And I'd really love to see them have someone fight for them, have somebody be on their side and really be their voice. And so I'm going to do my part to speak up for those students, as well as all my other students, but to get the services that they need and the support that they deserve by continuing to educate myself and others in my building. Well, I'm not planning to move out of the general education classroom. I feel that I'm a better educator, not only for my students with learning differences, but for all of my students. And I just really appreciate what I've learned, and hopefully going forward, I could really make some positive differences.